Oh, oops. There we go. Supposed to start this way. All right, folks. This is Michael Voss. Oh, we got a little reverb in the line. I'll fix that. So, we are back, and I thank you for joining us. Great show, and I thank you for joining us with it. As you may know, I am Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier, happy to be here with you on No Soundbites Allowed. I am the Dragon of the Southern Tier, and we're going to try and roar. So it looks like all systems are up today, and that's good. I apologize. I know last week we had a difficulty with the system, and it was not allowing us to broadcast as we normally do. For some reason, it was, basically YouTube redirected the broadcast to another channel that we have, and it kind of didn't go live. So we apologize about that. And that was our that was our 999th video. We went to our 1000th video, and I look forward to hearing everyone's comments about the 1000th video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was a nice celebration. With all that said, let's get into meat and potatoes. Let's really get into what's going on here today. So there's a bunch of things that we saw on the news. President Trump and whether or not there's going to be a 2020 election, I think is one of the biggest things that people have been talking about. There has been a lot of excitement about that. Everyone is freaking out. President Trump is not going to allow there to be an election. President Trump is going to prevent there from being a 2020 election. Oh my God, he's going to be an emperor. I really find that to be quite interesting. I find that to be a bit silly as well, because it's not really realistic. Matter of fact, what I think we have seen out of President Trump, if I'm understanding the politics, I think that Democrats have just been played very badly or very well. What I think has happened, when we heard President Trump come out and say that he feels like there should be a delay on the 2020 election. In fact, that news came out on, that was, I believe, 2 days ago from the BBC News. We saw this come out, and it was Donald Trump suggests delay to 2020 U.S. presidential election. It was interesting because immediately, as soon as that news came out, and that was on July 30th, the internet went insane. Everybody was freaking out, and everyone was suggesting that, the president doesn't have the power to do that, to start off with. The Congress is what does that. And they were saying, oh my God, this is about taking over the country. I have a slightly different take on that. And perhaps you have the same. I don't know if anyone's really talked about it. I haven't seen anyone come up with this take that I'm going to mention. I think that President Trump wanted to make sure that there would be an election. See, right now we have COVID-19. Everyone's talking about whether it's resurging, we're in COVID 2.0. We know that in October, COVID will be back, just like the flu. And we know that numbers, not just cases, but deaths will go back up. Because at the moment, the number of deaths related to COVID are at lows not seen since March. That includes the surge in Florida. That includes the surge in other states. We see that the number of deaths, not the number of cases, are down. Because we already knew that once people returned back to work, people went out for the summer, and more importantly, people going out for protests, we knew that once that happened, there was going to be more COVID cases. But cases do not mean death. And in a disease that affects, that has a 98% survivability rate for everyone except the most severe cases, those who are 71 and older, those with pre-existing conditions, other than those high-risk groups, 98% survivable. That's why we've seen that even though there's millions of cases, there are only hundreds of deaths. Mind you, every death is important. So when we understand that, we know that going into October, though, when the flu season comes in, besides the fact that there will be a misdiagnosis of the flu, Besides the fact that we know every year 80,000 people die to the flu every year. That is absolutely natural. And we're going to see some of those cases misdiagnosed. So we'll probably see an average less flu cases that lead to death and more of coronavirus cases. And if the Democrats do exactly what they did this spring, they want to shut down the entire country. They want to shut down the colleges. They want to shut down business. They want to keep you isolated and in home. And they're going to force you, if they can, to do mail-in ballots. Or they're going to, it seemed like they were going to suggest, let's try and rearrange the election. Somehow stop people. By coming out and saying, hey, he wants to delay the election because of fears, especially with coronavirus, the Democrats have guaranteed that there will be an election, and very likely people will come out and actually be in-person voting, which is the best thing that could happen. Now, this is my theory on it. You may say, Mike, that just doesn't make any sense, and I disagree with you completely. Maybe you think President Trump is trying to be Emperor Trump. But I have to tell you, he doesn't have the power to do it, even if he wanted to. And if you want to talk about emperors, think of Andrew Cuomo. Now, there's a man who wants to be emperor. Andrew Cuomo, who has the power and has shut down New York State. What about Governor Newsom, Governor Whitaker? People who are saying, you can't buy seeds. Yeah, you can't buy seeds to plant your own food. That's what some of these Democratic governors have come out with. You can't leave your homes. Remember, there was Operation COVID Crush, or Crush COVID, excuse me, Operation Crush COVID, which came out in April, which was by County Executive Jason Garnar out of Broome County, who said people weren't allowed to come out of their homes except every other day because he decided that that would be the best for your safety, that you are a prisoner in your own home. Even though he did mention that that was unofficial, he used the official power of the government to hold a press conference to say that you couldn't get out of your home. That's what the Democrats have done. So when we're looking at ways to try and combat this, you have to take into account they may well have tried to eliminate the election and, more importantly, try and eliminate people in-person voting, which cuts down. If you're in person, it's a lot lower chance of having malfeasance, manipulation of the election. Where in mail-in ballots, I mean, we've heard congressional candidates, we've heard various news agencies have all done tests on this and found that, yeah, somewhere between 3 to 5% of ballots may wind up being false ballots, illegal votes. That doesn't even count New York State, where if you're an illegal alien, you can get a driver's license, and with a click of a button over the internet, you can be registered to be a Democrat and go out and vote. Think that might affect an election? I think it will. So yeah, in-person voting, I think that's important. That's what I kind of think that President Donald Trump was thinking. Now, again, you can always please make a comment and say, you can call in to 607-242-1582. You can leave us a text. You can comment on No Soundbites Allowed on YouTube. And of course, you can go over to Facebook and you can make a comment there. We are looking for your comments. And if that is not working because the internet emperors, the holders of the internet, YouTube and Facebook, if they are somehow stopping that, please try and give us a call and let us know so we can let you know about that. And please, because they will never allow the algorithms to promote this, they don't believe in black Republicans or conservatives, please subscribe, share with your friends. So with that said, let's try and, so I don't know, maybe people think I'm off on that, but I really think that President Trump had no intention of ever stopping it. But that's just me. Other people may disagree and say, hey, Mike, you just got it wrong. Do I think that's going to stop people from voting for him? I don't really think so. In fact, I think that most people are seeing that even though polling, depending on where you're looking at it, is saying that President Trump will lose, that you're going to see Biden win. I think things that are very important and very critical in this election, and that are also questions about will we have an election, is whether or not we see things like this. You know, it came out on July 25th, and a lot of people didn't talk about this. We're seeing that questionable incidents where people who are supporters, especially black conservatives, who come out and do something other than the towing the line, following the approved message, they're having lots of problems. In particular, there was the murder of Burnell Trammell. That was out in Milwaukee. That's terrifying, especially since that was a city devastated by Black Lives Matters. The riots, the fires, the floods, the defunding of the police, that's all still going on right now. And this man was murdered, and a lot of people think it was because of his support of President Trump, especially after he had just had an interview saying that he supports President Trump. That's a scary and terrifying thing. By the way, Emmy Dayton says, in-person voting can be done safely regardless of your personal thought of the virus. Well, you're right, Emmy, and thank you for your comment. This isn't, when I said that President Trump, in-person voting is important and it's less of a risk, let's also remember, if the masks are as successful as we're told they're supposed to be, then that means that if you're wearing a mask and I'm wearing a mask, your risk of transmission is incredibly low. If everyone's doing social distancing, as we are right now, your risk goes down. So if you can go to Walmart, you can go and vote. Quite honestly. If you can go to Walmart, you can go and vote. So I think it's very important that we have in-person voting. But going on about Burnell Trammell, Burnell Trammell, I think there's a lot of people who are seeing the backlash on this, that are seeing groups like Black Lives Matters, the takeover of Seattle by the Chaz or CHOP, the autonomous zones, the attempts at autonomous zones in Asheville, North Carolina, in Atlanta, Georgia, I think they tried one in Dallas and in New York City, and in Washington, D.C. Something that hasn't gotten a lot of press. I think people are noticing that. They're seeing it and they're saying, hey, I don't agree with this. I don't want to defund the police. I want law and order, and I want there to be a vote. And they don't agree with this. These groups that are saying you can't speak, you can't do anything unless you agree with them. And they're getting more and more violent. When people say no to Black Lives Matter, when they say no to Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, otherwise known as PLOT, and the other fringe leftist groups that have very loud voices but very small numbers of members, what we see is violence. They go out and they start rioting. They start looting. You know, we've seen that they are responsible for the deaths of a 19-year-old, a 16-year-old in Seattle, of an 8-year-old in Atlanta, of a mother who's 24, and that was in, Indianapolis. And we've seen more murders that have been associated and directly attached to either the actions or members of Black Lives Matters and its other far left wings than there have been people who have been killed by the police this year. Think about that. There's been over 20 people murdered either by members of Black Lives Matters or its supporters at its events or at events that have been promoted by them, including riots and looting. That's more than what we've seen by the police that they're supposedly doing this all about. And that says something. And I think that's why we're going to see a backlash. I think a lot of people are upset with the Democratic Party that has refused. I mean, Jerry Nadler absolutely refused in Congress and beforehand to admit that any of the rioting that we have seen actual video of, do I have one up here? I thought I had it up. That he denies that it's even existing. He said it's made up. He says that, can you imagine that? Jerry Nadler, a member of Congress, prominent Democrat, New York State, says that there is no autonomous zone in Seattle, even though it's been reported. There are no riots and fires, even though we've seen the devastation of Minnesota. We've seen the devastation of Portland. We've seen the devastation of Seattle. That we see in New York City, devastation, burning and looting. And he wants to, even in my local community, right after Black Lives Matters had its event, we had windows and businesses being broken into. We had a playground for handicapped children burned to the ground. We've seen that an elderly man has been assaulted by Black Lives Matters twice. The second time putting him in the hospital. And it's on video. Representative Nadler, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the rest of them, please, if you want to deny this is happening, please look at the video of a 68-year-old man being attacked by 30-year-old men who are prominent supporters, and actually one of them is a leader of Black Lives Matters. It is alleged that Masai Andrews, the leader of Black Lives Matters and Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow in Binghamton, to the best of our knowledge, since they are secret groups, attacked a 68-year-old man, put him in the hospital. Really? But according to Democrats, this isn't happening. I don't know. Have people heard about this? Have you heard about this? Anyone? And if there's a Democrat out there telling me that wants to explain to me how Jerry Nadler is correct when he says that this doesn't exist, who the actual evidence I have presented for weeks now, since June, if any Democrat would like to, or a progressive, which are not the same thing, but if there is a progressive, a member of Black Lives Matters, a member of Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, or any of the other far left groups, Indivisible, New York, any of those groups, if you want to get on and call in and tell me how I'm wrong, I would love to see it. But I don't think that's the case. We're in a scary place. And these are reasons why a lot of people aren't going to vote. I think there's a lot of Democrats who are not going to go out and vote. I think there are going to be some Republicans. I think there's going to be some independents. But I think most Democrats aren't going to go out and vote in this election. Because I think they have no interest. Biden, not of interest at all. And by the way, speaking of Biden, let's talk about the fact that I made a prediction, which was, in 2018, I predicted that we would see Kamala Harris, Senator Kamala Harris, be elected become the vice presidential candidate for the Democratic Party. And it appears I am correct. It seems like I'm very correct on that. I'm trying to just find that link for you right here. Kamala Harris. Just so I can show you that I'm correct. Jason from Bing, you were right. Yes. Most recently, let me just stop this from having a sound. It should come up in a second. But yeah, there we go. This was me talking about it back in June 19th. Will Kamala Harris get the VP pick? Yeah, I was calling it way back then. We knew that this was going to happen. And Joe Biden needs her because, well, quite honestly, Democrats aren't excited. We have a gentleman, Joe Biden, who has difficulty explaining anything in a paragraph, who's been hiding out pretty much in a basement for almost the entirety of COVID-19 and even to this day. And every time he does pop up, he has an incredible gaffe, usually relating to race. Or did we already forget the Breakfast Club meeting with Charlemagne, where he's saying that if you don't vote for him, you can't be black. That the old white man was defining what is blackness as a Democrat and mandating that if you happen to be black, you must vote for him because you have no choice. You have no mind. Which I find to be incredibly insulting. And I thought it was incredibly insulting. And I think that there's a backlash to this. I think most people who are black, definitely Hispanics who are naturally conservative, blacks who tend to be more conservative, I'm talking about in their lifestyles, they're not going to be interested in voting for a Democratic Party, I believe, that is making lots of promises and doing absolutely nothing. They didn't help the back 8 years of President Obama and Vice President Biden, and they did nothing for unemployment for blacks. We saw that they had no help for improving new businesses by blacks and blacks, Hispanics, minorities. That didn't improve until we got President Trump, a businessman. I don't think they're encouraged. And I don't think there's anything that Biden is saying, and I don't think there's anything that Kamala Harris was saying that's going to make them more interested. I mean, Kamala Harris, and you can go back to some of the coverage I've done on it, she's never got over 5% of Democrats that were interested in her. And we know that the fringe left hate Kamala Harris because she was a prosecutor. They think she's a cop. And there's nothing worse than being a cop to the fringe left. Although I don't have a problem with it. I back the blue. I have come out publicly many times saying it, and I am going to say it again, and I will be going to a public event soon, and I will be speaking about the support of our police, of law and order. Can we improve the police? Absolutely. But you know what? We can't live without them. We can't live without them. And we want them. Because everywhere you have seen a decrease of the police, everywhere that you have seen this defunding, which means disbanding to some extent, they have disbanded the police. And whenever we have seen that, we have seen a skyrocketing in the number of shootings and murders that have happened. I mean, you're talking about New York City up 276%. That's insane. And yet we hear Black Lives Matters. We have to get rid of the police. Again, the same Black Lives Matters that goes out and uses, and I want to make sure I get this right, the same Black Lives Matters, which is run by this gentleman, which is an alias for a man named Masai Andrews. And what do they have to say for themselves? This is what they said to me. They're using racial slurs and physical attacks, attacking elderly white men and women, I would presume. They're using racial slurs that they accuse of others. And this is what the Democrats expect people to vote for? By the way, this is really interesting, by the way, and I'm going to get into this in a second. This very same Masai Andrews, who is Roderick Douglas on Facebook, who is looking to get money, he's asking people to donate to him so that he can get drugs. He wants people to donate to him, and apparently 20 people are, so that this is the $30 a month. Pay him on Patreon $30 a month so that you can get drugs. So that he can get drugs, so that you can pay for his phone bill. Even though he has a job, he is employed. But he expects, because he is the leader of Black Lives Matters, I presume, that, and 20 people agree, that they're going to pay him every month to use drugs, to pay for his phone bill, even though he's working, because Black Lives Matters is beating up on elderly individuals in our community. And they're being supported by elected officials like Councilwoman Angela Riley, Councilwoman Angela Riley, who had no concern about an attack on one of her elderly constituents, and instead said, well, Black Lives Matters is more important. And I'm paraphrasing there. Yeah, I think the election's going to be, well, it's not going to be a landslide. I think it's going to be 60-40 in favor of President Trump. Because why would anyone vote for Black Lives Matters? Why would anyone vote for a party that supports decreasing the amount of safety by decreasing the number of police, increasing the amount of crime, increasing the number of riots and looting and burnt down cities? That's what the Democrats are asking for. And then they turn to you and say, well, that didn't happen. I don't see it. Stick their fingers in their ears. They don't hear it. They don't see it because they don't want to. But they want you to live with that. You know what? Jerry Nadler doesn't live in Minneapolis, so he doesn't care the fact that the city burnt down. But I think voters do. I don't know, folks. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, this is a conversation. You can tell me if you think I'm wrong, if I'm missing the boat here, that somehow we're going to see Democrats rally around people like Roderick Douglas because they think it's okay to use racial slurs, read it up there, against people who are running for elected office simply because they're not part of Black Lives Matters, because they have a different opinion. Because maybe, just maybe, using the brains God gave me, the training I got from going to college, and the good being raised as a good human being by my mother led me to say, hey, I believe in the Republican conservative principles. Maybe that's, the way it's going to be. But hang on 1 second. Or 1 second. Hey, folks, we got a call in and... Ow. Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Hey, Mike, it's Jason. How you doing?
Hey, Jason. Hey, everyone. This is Jason from Bing. And this is not the county executive, Jason Garnar. Jason's a regular caller, and you can be too, calling 607-242-1582. And what's going on, Jason?
Hey, yeah, it's nice to be able to call in. Last week, I know you were having that problem there with the
YouTube rerouted. You may have missed me when I said this earlier. YouTube rerouted the show onto one of a very separate channel that I have.
Oh.
And I don't know how they did that because all my settings are exactly the same every week. But, that's what happened. So I apologize.
Yeah, no problem at all. Hey, yeah, so there are a lot going on this week. And, you must have, missed my call there to our local radio station because I was literally on there. I probably the longest call ever with Bob Joseph.
Oh, my.
On his show for like 15 minutes. And I started out by talking about the issue with Donald Trump and how he, is pretty much trolling the media by putting out the narrative that, he about delaying, doing the whole delay with the election there.
Okay.
You pretty much said exact same things that, I was thinking at the time.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
Well, before we go further, just for the folks who don't know, our local talk news radio show, which, by the way, has got a monopoly on this because they are the only talk radio news program in the southern tier of New York, is run by, they have a morning show called Binghamton Now. It is run by Bob Joseph, who is the host of the program, who most people collectively believe is very left-leaning in his views. I think that's a fair statement. So go on, Jason.
Yeah, left-leaning. You if you miss it, I got it on my YouTube. I did a clip of that, 15 minutes, and it's just like I felt like we were playing a game of cat and dog, the entire time. He's trying. It felt like he was trying to set me up to get in an argument with me, but like I said, I just made the simple point was this: is that Donald Trump, needs to put in the position, to make sure all the Democrats get on the record and say, hey, guess what? There's nothing wrong with the voting system. All the votes are right. Because the bottom line is we both know that when Donald Trump wins this election, they're going to look for every single excuse in the playbook, of where, Biden got ripped off. And they're going to go straight to the Postal Service. And so by him basically jumping out in front of this, he's putting them on the record to say, hey, look, he says, hey, I was already trying to fix the problem. You guys kept telling me it was perfect, So
well, I think it even goes deeper, because I know I spent a couple minutes talking about it, but let's think about it. This is how I think, if this is the reasoning that he had, and I'm guessing because I don't know his mind, but I think the president's thinking, not only is he going to make sure that people are going to be able to have in-person voting by saying, let's delay this, we know that the Democrats are going to be on top of this because he said that, and because they're putting out that rumor that he's going to be Emperor Trump. Then we're seeing they're going to make sure that there's even fewer, hopefully, in-person errors, let's call them, or fraudulent votes because of this. And he's going to be able to, and when he wins, he's going to say, well, you guys were making sure of everything. You can't complain now. You can't say it's a bad vote because you took the effort just because I said we might delay it. I think he's really thinking ahead here.
No, absolutely. I mean, he does this with everything. I mean, it's 100% on that. So,
well, Democrats right now, especially the elected Democrats, they're like 6-year-olds. All you have to do is say, don't do this. They go right out and do it. Don't press the red button. They're going to press the red button. Hey, look at that look at Minneapolis. It's burnt down. I can't see that. That's basically what they're doing right now. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's just, it's interesting, though, is if you can try to take a couple steps back and watch these groups. And, again, I bring it back there. A lot of them are moving to try to push this Marxist agenda. And I think, too, is that, again, like I was telling you before, I've been doing the reading on the critical race theory and, a lot of the social stuff that, to the Binghamton University students to, be implemented into their community organizing. And that's where I was going to jump into talking about that situation there with John Solak getting, the situation where he had the confrontation where he was allegedly kicked in the head there.
This video, it doesn't show the kick, but it does show Messiah Andrews, who is being investigated by just so people know what's going on. He is being investigated by the police at this time for the assault on the gentleman who is named John Solak. It's on Twitter. The video is available publicly, and we know for a fact that Messiah Andrews is a violent individual. He's promoted violence multiple times. I've seen it in person, and I've seen it in his writings, especially under the writings of Roderick Douglass that he often uses. So there is that.
Yeah. And, the thing is that even John, I see he called up again. He called up our local radio station. He talked about this as well. One of the things he mentioned, that I took note of was he was saying, well, these groups, they have just a few radical individuals in it who are very dangerous, and it's going to lead to something that's going to really, be a big thing. And, the question is that he says, well, are you still going to go out there and do this? And he says, yeah, I'm going to do this, but the interesting thing is, though, to me, as I know from what my readings have been, is that there will always be, 1, 2, 3, 4 different individuals like this that will constantly be pushing the limits and causing these violent acts, because that technically is the way that the rules of radicals, which I say is their Bible, is, and that's how they operate. And so when you watch that situation there happen, and then you refer back to the previous situation where he had another altercation with another individual, and how that was justified by our own councilwoman Angela Riley, basically saying that it was John's fault, saying, "Hey, look, you're throwing stones." It's like, those words you're saying, they're so provocative that you deserved, or you're getting kicked in the head was justified because of those hateful words, defined by her as being hate speech, and so that justified the action being taken against him. And so like I said though, is that what I'm saying now though is that the one or two, three people that he says that are extremely violent, they're always going to be there. Those are the grunts. Those are the thugs. Those individuals are part of the movement and the resistance that needs to be there at all times. So there always will be those individuals, and they will. And the intent actually is to silence individuals like him, because what they look at it is like, look at, they're going to take one of their pawns and they're going to take out a major voice, or anybody who's actually, speaking out against their organization. And so obviously, we hear about what's going on in the community. I mean, John definitely's, talking it up a lot, and he is definitely, turning heads. And for them to, have one of these guys end up with a felony and locked up, as long as they can take him out, that we read some of the books, you would say that, well, you know what, that would actually be a win for them.
Well, let me clarify. One, you broke up a little bit at the end there.
Oh, yeah.
But Jason, for people who are looking on the screen right now, the gentleman who made the assault was Thomas Gray. He's been identified. There are charges against him as we speak. So I should say the alleged assault. The video, as you can see in the video, I covered it. This was back on June 9th. Picture, man in the suit is John Solak, who's 68. And he has a video on Twitter, which we went and reviewed in that episode on June 9th. Elderly man attacked councilwoman. Justifies it, that councilwoman being Angela Riley. In case anyone thought for a second that I wasn't covering this, we did. And yet again, I think this is a reason why we're seeing people are terrified right now. Terrified. I mean, this came out on July 22nd, but we've known this for a while. People are terrified of talking about politics, which I'm not. And trust me, I get my threats from Plot, from Black Lives Matter. They've already been attacking me, and as some people know, I am running for an elected office. They're already making their attacks. But 62% of Americans feel they can't speak. Don't worry, you can. On this show, you can, and you won't get attacked. Whether you happen to be, whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, a conservative, a libertarian, a progressive, member of BLM, I'll let you speak, just as Jason is. But yeah, I think, when we see that this many people are terrified, are restricted and feel they can't speak up without getting attacked, like happened to John Solak, like has happened with me, because of people like Roderick Douglas, who is the alias for Messiah Andrews, which is the leader of Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow in the Southern Tier. Yeah, I'm blowing him up in his spot because I want people to know what they are dealing with. And that is the same thing that's happening in Seattle, Portland, in New York City, in Atlanta, in Asheville, North Carolina. If you let this go without having people speak about it, they will get worse. So this is why it's important that we cover this. So thank you for that, bringing that up, Jason. I think it's very important.
Yeah, I mean, it just, and like I mentioned last week, or not last week, maybe the week before last, I keep focusing on Binghamton University, and, I just started doing more research on, like, sociology major and then their community organizing system. It's just like literally the only type of people that are going to take those classes are extreme left or extremely liberal individuals. And so I almost see to some degree that conservatives and individuals who are Republicans are actually at a disadvantage because they are so well trained and versed. They do. Granted, is that if you do get in a full conversation with them and you start laying out, logic and reason to their methodology, then it does fall apart. But
that's why they use violence.
That they are easily able to, get these lower individuals, like what I would call the thugs, the same individuals that would attack somebody like, John Solak.
Or burn down a playground.
It's very easy to influence those individuals with their rhetoric and their, and what they, with what they've been educated in, to move this their cause, which is really a resistance. And the thing is that when you look at what they do and what they're what that course almost is designed for. I mean, it is an extension of the Democrat Party, because if you look at the way they use their intimidation, the way they use their influence, and the way they move through the political system, I mean, it completely, it's completely utilized, to silence, to intimidate, and to, move the Democrat Party. But then again, you do see the fact, though, is that they do eat their own in the end, to some degree.
To some extent. I mean, I know that Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow is now attacking County Executive Jason Garnar. He's obviously not left enough for them, even though he's tried to force people to be into isolation, only leaving their homes every other day through his abuse of the power of government. He can't deny that. He did that. And this is, some of the things that they want. But to address the colleges, I mean, not only in Binghamton University, which has massive issues and is currently being sued by students and YAL, the Young Americans for Liberty, is the association. They are currently suing them for the protests and the attacks on conservative students at Binghamton University in November 2019. They are currently being sued for that. But at the same time, we're seeing the environment, and I have on the screen right now, and by the way, if you missed the links on this, in the description on YouTube, you will find links to everything that I'm talking about so you can read it for yourself. But there's Rutgers University, came out July 20th, and mentioned that they're going to de-emphasize grammar because of Black Lives Matters. Let's really think about this. This is how they program people. They change the language. They change the way the language is used, because Rutgers University, and I really am sorry that I went to that school now, and I denounce Rutgers University and the fact that I went there. They're also pledging to decolonize the Writing Center. What is that supposed to mean? They're going to kick out everybody who's white? Which is racism. This is racism, and they're using the English department to promote racism and to emphasize ebonics, to emphasize, English is supposed to, American English, the English department, is to try and make you a better writer, to better understand words and communication. And they're trying to get rid of that so that they could emphasize a political philosophy. How is that not programming people when they are literally telling you, we're going to use words from an organization who's dedicated? Black Lives Matters, as they have admitted on national TV, is a political organization. It is part of the Democratic Party. And money that is donated to Black Lives Matters is donated through Act Blue to the Democratic Party. They are a political organization. Their efforts are to politicize and to promote votes for Democrats. That's it. They're using George Floyd to be able to go and change an English department so that they can promote a political outcome, which is, in the case of Black Lives Matters, socialism. You cannot escape that. And again, I come back to, in 2020 election, what are you looking to vote for? You hate President Trump, fantastic. You want to vote for this? You can, and you can tell me that's better than President Trump, but I have to tell you, I don't see this being positive, and I don't see our students being brainwashed in English courses and at universities like Binghamton University. I don't think that's a positive. I mean, what do you think, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, you said a lot there, and
I know.
The one thing that was just that about the Marxist, ideology, and this is about really making Americans feel like they're an alien in their own country, and about dividing us, and then further, pretty much disintegrating every single thing about our country. And the one way is like you're just saying there is that what the irony is that they want to split us up with multiculturalism, and it actually makes our country less unified, so they can create more division. And the irony is that they literally have to go in a racist route, like with ebonics. I don't even understand how that comes, I mean, what form of language or where that comes to. I mean, I always thought that kind of extended to a fact of just poor English, and now they've adapted it into a cultural language somehow. Yet then again, they do that for the sole purpose of, again, dividing us. And then to say that anybody criticized that, well, even as yourself, I mean, you'd be called racist for saying that that's not proper English. And then,
I was.
Huh?
I already was called,
Yeah, I mean,
Plot
it's
has already
hilarious.
done that. And they've already said that I'm not black enough to be voted for. Literally
Yeah.
in the race I'm in, just a real quick thing. Literally in the race I'm in, I'm up against a man almost the same age as me, who happens to be white and is in the office already. So they're literally telling people that the older white man who is in the race is more black than me. That's funny, but that's their logic. It's insane.
Yeah, and I don't know. Maybe they should test his ebonics or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's incredible, man.
It truly is. But I was gonna actually call in later while you develop more, because I mean, I've been dying to ask you what your opinion was on the Obama eulogy at the funeral there, and then some of the demagoguery that he actually threw out right at the end there.
I know what you're talking about, and
Yeah.
actually, I think I have it up. At the John Lewis,
Yep.
this was at the John Lewis funeral, which John Lewis was at one time a great standard bearer for rights, everyone's rights, back in the 60s. And, then here comes President Obama talking about during a funeral. This is how bad, and again, this is why I think Democrats are not interested in this race. Because President Obama at a man's funeral is promoting politics. He's pushing out a political message at a funeral, not talking about the man's past, not talking about what he did in life, but talking about, and when you go and vote, you should be voting. You should already have automatic voter registration. That we should get rid of the filibuster. By the way, Democrats wanted the filibuster, and depending on which Congress it is, they either want it or don't want it. Both parties flip-flop on this. Democrats are the ones who are actually promoting that. And now he wants to call it a part of Jim Crow, except when Democrats wanted it, it was part of freedom and rights. I mean, come on. That's insulting. That's insulting to the memory of Representative Lewis. He deserved better treatment than that. He deserves better than being used for a political message. That is cheap and that is low. And I find that, President Obama doing that was a disservice to the memory of John Lewis and everything that he stood for. It's beneath the seat of former presidents, and it is nothing but pure politicking. It turned it into a circus, in my opinion. People may disagree with me on that, but I think it's wrong to go to someone's funeral and to politic on their grave. That's like using children as a tool to get someone to vote for you. That is insulting, it is low, and it is wrong. That's what I think about it.
Yeah, that's I was thinking the same way. And then one of the things he mentioned, I was going to tie into something else, was his. I mean, he literally took an incident there with the Floyd situation and used the word police in plural form to actually say that multiple police are taking their knees and shoving it in the backs of black men's necks, like when he was speaking. And I was just like, wow. So he threw all police officers as being the same.
That's just insane.
Wow.
You know what?
Yeah.
That's ridiculous, because then I could turn around and say that because, as an example, because Messiah Andrews, otherwise known as Roderick Douglass, who is a leader of Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow and Black Lives Matters in Binghamton, in the southern tier of New York, because he is out there begging for people to pay for his drug habit, and to say that if you're asking people to pay for you to smoke marijuana, then that is a drug habit. So I'm not making anything up. This is his page. This is what he has advertised. So that's like saying that because he does that, everyone in Black Lives Matters is some kind of drug addict. That's a ridiculous statement. No one in their right mind would say that. In fact, it's kind of like saying that because Bill Clinton, as you can see here, and let me make sure it's clear, because Bill Clinton, as reported by Mike Cernovich, who is one of the people who led the research and the uncovering of the fact that Bill Clinton was named as one of the individuals partaking in the underage abuse, the pedophilia of young girls with Epstein, and was on Epstein's, according to the article as you see in front of you right now, was on the orgy island. You know, does that mean every president does that? Does that mean every Democrat does that? I don't think so. But, you know, it's kind of making a statement there. So, you know, when I hear President Obama or someone say, well, because one is like that, one cop may be bad, all cops are bad. There are 900,000 cops in our nation at this time. They have 1 million interactions with the public per day. And you know what? We don't see. This isn't some kind of hunt for black people. More white people are killed than black people are killed by the police. Almost all of the cases are justified. And there's between 9 to 36 unjustified murders of black men in America each year, which is sad. And that is a problem. And we need to deal with it. But there's also 6,600 black on black crimes taking place in cities like Chicago, which has over 300 people that have been murdered this year. There are 127 shootings and I believe 80 murders in New York City at this time, most of them black on black. And I don't hear anyone talking about that. You want to talk about where's the magnitude of the problem? Can we improve the police? Absolutely. Is the magnitude of the problem that needs to be done to help the black community and the Hispanic community, is that where we need to be focusing on police or the communities themselves and drugs in particular? I think it's pretty obvious. Look at the numbers. We need to work on the drug culture. We need to work on the black community. And police, you know what? Yeah, I want to improve them, but defunding them is not going to do it. I mean, that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, you know, I wanted to walk into the police situation there, and there was a few things I
We
noticed.
got about 5 minutes because I do want to make sure everyone else has a chance.
Yeah, sure. It's just, one of the things I was going to say is about just the labeling of the groups, because you got the Black Lives Matter, then you have the Blue Lives Matter, and then you know all
Blue
lives
lives.
matter.
I believe in blue lives and all lives. Yes.
Yeah, and so the thing is that when these groups are being debated and getting into these, you know, and then this is, like I said, this is part of their whole intersectionality, you know, hierarchy type thing. And I heard this happen, and I think that for a perspective of the police department and for those who are within the profession of or even like the sheriffs themselves, to really, I believe that to I don't know if I would say win the argument as much or put it in a position, you know, it's just really to focus on the simple fact is that the police are here to do a job that we have them do, and the laws themselves are what we want them to enforce. And so, I mean, I see at some point just like, you know, you see the Black Lives Matter, you know, and they're yelling back, and you get the Blue Lives Matter saying, well, Blue Lives Matter, and then all lives matter. And I'm like thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, this is so non-productive. It's because the bottom line is their argument about, well, you know, we don't need as much funding. And then the bottom to my point would be this, is that, you know what, we have to start looking at, what are the needs of our departments, how are we utilizing our money, and then simply say, look, this is what we have, well, this is what we need, and this what needs to be done, so we can do the job that needs to be done, rather than bickering with these groups. And I do see that sometimes some of the arguments kind of get a little lost in the weeds too, especially when you've got some of these radicals out there, like the guy who confronted John Solak, because those
Thomas
guys
Gray
there,
or Messiah Andrews, or both of them, actually, both of them.
Yeah, and so what I'm saying is that these guys, they capture some of the, so what happens, I believe, is that some of the focus ends up on them. And so what happens is the police department or sheriffs, they're basically pointing and saying, look at these, radical groups. And the thing is that what they make the mistake of doing is believing that the only people who believe in any sort of defunding of the police are just those radicals. Yet there are individuals who are slightly empathetic to maybe an overall perspective, saying, well, do we really need the funding here, or should we really advocate it here? And I think the argument really needs to be put at, like, this is what we have, this is what we need, and this is what we need to do what we have, rather than literally getting in an argument with the thugs. And I think that sometimes what happens is they start arguing with thugs, and it really politically, I don't really know if it actually gets you anywhere. You know what I mean?
Well, I truly believe, and I want to thank you for the comments. I do want to give someone else a chance there. But please, I'm looking at the comments. As you know, I always respond. So, but do stay with us on that, okay?
Sure, absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Jason.
Sure. Thanks, Mike.
And by the way, folks, you can always call in at 607-242-1582 to make your comments known as well. I think it's that you have to have a conversation. And I think if someone is open to have a conversation, that they're willing to actually hear what you have to say, then that's someone you want to have a conversation with. And it doesn't matter what political party they're in. I know members of Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, of Black Lives Matters. I know one of the individuals who said that I'm not black enough to be elected, but a white man is. And first of all, and let me clarify something about that when I say that. If you're basing your vote on what someone's skin color is, don't vote. And if you're telling me that my skin color is the most important thing in an election, don't vote. I'll say that right now. You shouldn't vote. If that's the criteria by which you decide is the gender that someone was born with, if you're going to vote because Kamala Harris is black, and that's the reason, because you think that Joe Biden is going to suddenly be out because he's got dementia and she's going to be the one that takes over. If that's your reasoning because she's a woman or because she's black, don't vote. And I would say the same thing if that's, if President Trump were black. That's not a reason. And if you're looking at my race, don't vote. But when we're seeing this, if people, when they start saying something about, well, you should vote because of someone's skin color. No, absolutely not. We should have people voting because of what they believe in. And that's the important thing. And that's the only thing. That should be the reason. But if we have people who are willing to talk, like I keep asking, I'm asking for people who are progressives. I'm asking for people who I know are progressives. I know a lot of progressives. I know a lot of people in libertarians who are conservatives, who are not just Republicans. I've done interviews with the elected officials in my region, actually 8 counties of New York and in Congress, in both parties. You are free to call in. I want to have that discussion. If I don't understand something, let me understand it. If there's something I'm missing that's important, please explain it to me. That's what I want to do. And I do that in my personal life as well as here on the show. And I think that's what everyone needs to do. We need to have that conversation. It's okay to disagree. It's perfectly fine that your mind isn't going to be changed, because sometimes it's just about having the discussion. If you want to tell me you want to improve the police, whether you're in Seattle, Minneapolis, New York City, Binghamton, New York. I don't care where you may be. If you tell me you want to improve the police, I will tell you, yes, I agree. How can we get that done? If you're telling me you want to defund the police because your skin is black or you're Hispanic, I don't understand what you're talking about, because you're not going to be better off. You're just not. A lot of people may not realize it. Where I live is considered locally to be a very dangerous area. It's considered a hot zone of violence. I've lived in far, far worse places in my life. When I was homeless, I lived in a crack house for a short period of time. I lived on the streets. That was in LA. Far more dangerous. I've lived in New York City. I can take you through parts of the Bronx where I grew up. Far more. And my point was on that. And yet, you want to tell me that if you're going to if you defund the police, do you think these hot zones of crime, like in Chicago, like in Atlanta, where they burned down the Wendy's, where they killed an 8-year-old child, like in Seattle, where they killed a 16-year-old and a 19-year-old at the autonomous zone, like in Baltimore and in Detroit, every day, where we have as many people killed, black on black crime, as the number of people killed by police in a year. If you want to tell me that having fewer police is going to make that better, I don't think so. You know, there's a meme out there right now, and that meme is, you call 911, you're out of luck because they're not going to arrive in time. In fact, it's something that the NRA has spoken about, and many of the gun rights groups, like the Liberty First Foundation, Scope, and many others, say for women, they believe in, hey, if you're a woman, you need to be able to defend yourself. You have to be able to arm yourself, because the police may take 3 minutes, could take 9 minutes. I believe nationally it's 6 minutes to get to you to save your life if you are able to call 911 before something happens. Then you have to be able to defend yourself. Imagine how long it's going to be for the police to show up and try and save your life if there's less of them. Defunding the police does not make you safer. Improving the police does. There's a big difference in that. And I understand the emotion that BLM is using right now. They are using the deaths, kind of like what President Obama did. They're using the deaths to promote a political ideology, to make you react in a very specific manner. They want you to react and vote politically because they're political organizations. That's what BLM is. And they want to use the deaths of these individuals to motivate you to do what they say, because you should have no free will of your own. Kind of like Joe Biden said, that you have to vote Democrat because you're black. You have to want to defund the police because you're black. Well, here's the part that they forget. If there are less police, who's going to save your life when you get attacked? Who's going to help save your life and protect your property? The local crackhead? Black Lives Matters? Heck, Black Lives Matters is one of the groups that is actually causing the problem in many cities. And their supporters have killed people. They killed the mom in Jessica Dottie Whitaker. They killed that mom, one of the supporters of BLM in Indianapolis, allegedly. They killed the 8-year-old child in Atlanta. Do you think defunding the police makes you safer? How? If there are less police, how can you possibly be safer? Because what? A social worker is going to save your life? You think so? I don't think so. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you think I'm wrong. Maybe you think, hey, social workers are going to be the way to do it. They're going to save your life. Maybe you think that sensitivity training is going to make it better. Because, hey, when the police have to deal, and I have watched this happen, where there is someone who is high on PCP, who happened to be white, by the way, and when the police are dealing with that individual who's high on PCP, busting on people's doors, do you think sensitivity training is going to make him stop? Or is a taser going to do it? And God forbid that they have a fight and that person tries to arm themselves like Rayshard Brooks did, who wasn't on PCP and made a bad choice. Yeah, the police can use deadly force. It happens. That was a choice that Rayshard Brooks made. He didn't have to fight the police. He didn't have to try and shoot at them, yes, with a taser, which in that case could have been deadly. No, he didn't have to do that. He made that choice. That was on him. Is sensitivity training going to make that better? What are they going to say? Please, don't fight us. Stop hitting me, please. Are you kidding me? Is that the reality that we're looking at? I mean, you can tell me that you disagree, but I don't think it makes sense. Jason mentions increase in organized crime forcing individuals to pay for protection. You know, that's a good point. That is a good point. You could see, and probably would see, an increase in crime, in organized crime. I know there was an article early on by Andy Nago and also by the Seattle Police Department chief, I forget her name at the moment, mentioning how the businesses in the Seattle Chaz were being solicited for payments. They were basically say pay them off, the Chaz, or your building and your business would be destroyed by looting and rioting. Kind of sad. And that was something you can look up that actually happened. And we've seen an increase of inordinate numbers throughout all of this, the looting that have led to suicides, overdoses, all kinds of deaths. And I did want to mention that as well today, that, you know, I've been saying for months, if by chance, and I want to take a moment to say this because I think it's very important. If you feel like, and I just want to make sure you can see this, if by chance you feel like you can't make it, that you're having problems, you have bad feelings, you want to harm yourself, please, whatever you do, call this number, the National Suicide Hotline. That number is 800-273-8255. Let me say it again, 800-273-8255. If you don't feel like you are safe with yourself, if you have feelings that are dangerous to yourself and or others, please seek help. Give them a call. Reach out to a friend. Use Facebook, Twitter, what it's supposed to be used for. Go out there and use it to try and get help. That is one of the most important things we can possibly do for each other. And I want you to have that opportunity to do that. Because that's a sad thing that we have seen, and this is very few people who are announcing this, that rapes are up. Domestic abuse is up. Suicides are up. Overdoses are up. We're talking about somewhere between, depending on the numbers and how you're counting, somewhere between 30% and 300%. And the fact that there are rioting and looting that are going on, protests that are happening, and people reacting afterwards, after those protests, destroying property and other forms of crimes, this isn't helping people feel good. So I want you to please remember, if you need help, seek that out. But again, it also goes to the question that I have. If you know that someone is in the middle of domestic abuse, if you know someone that is being raped or has been a victim of rape, is less police going to help them? Is that going to help someone? Is that going to make them better? I mean, you can make the case, and it's a fair case, to say, well, defunding the police means that we can pay for people who will be able to help someone with an overdose. They're a drug addict. Maybe that could help. But are you willing to take away the police that are going to help protect a woman get justice for being raped? Are you going to take away the police who are going to come into a home and stop domestic abuse or try and prevent it? That they're going to go out there and investigate the murders that happened, like over at Atlanta, that have happened in Seattle, that are happening in New York City, in Chicago, Baltimore? I don't know. I don't think that's the case. But that's, again, an argument, a discussion that we should have. And maybe you think I'm wrong. That's okay. You can say, Mike, I don't agree. I'm okay with that. But we can't have that conversation if we have individuals who are out there, who are saying things. I'm upset about this. Who are out there using racial slurs, who are out there attacking innocent young men, elderly men. When individuals are doing stuff like that, I think it's a very difficult argument to say that we need less police, considering that's the situation we have to deal with. I don't think that helps protect people, giving them more free rein. And again, the data so far, and I'm a big man on data. It's not my feelings about this. It's the data. The data shows everywhere they've defunded police, which means every time they've said we're going to defund the police, that means that there are fewer police, that they have disbanded to some extent the police, and crime has skyrocketed. Attempts at murder have skyrocketed every single place this has been done. So why in the world should we do this? And I understand most people don't want to be the one who says this. Most people don't want to be the one that comes out and says, hey, I don't agree. I'm willing to say it for you. I'll be more than happy to say it for you. I'll be the voice that says, yeah, I understand. These are a problem. Because I'm willing to stand out there. Let them come after me. What are they going to do? I've been doing this 12 years. They're not going to stop me now. And a couple of racial slurs are not going to stop me. It never will. So we've covered a lot of ground today. We've got about 15 minutes. And I want to hear, I keep asking week after week after week, and I will forever ask, if you disagree. I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. You can be a conservative, a libertarian. You can be a progressive. I don't care. I don't ask that. If you want to volunteer it, fantastic. But I just want to hear, if you think that I've been wrong about this, if you think that President Trump is trying to be a dictator and Governor Andrew Cuomo is not, Governor Newsom is not, Governor Whitmer is not, I'd love to hear you explain to me what that difference is. If you think that defunding the police is a positive thing that will make people safer, please explain to me that. Show me the data that's different than what I'm seeing. If you believe, like Jerry Nadler, that, and I should bring this up, if you believe, like Jerry Nadler, that none of this is happening, that all of these attacks, all these cities that are on fire, the looting, the rioting, David Dorn, who was killed, if you think that didn't happen, that's just Republican right-wing fantasies. David Dorn isn't dead. David Dorn wasn't a police officer. If you think that's the case, please explain that to me. Give me the logic. Give me the facts. You know what? Even give me your feelings. Tell me why you feel like having fewer police is going to stop the crimes that we see out there. How is that going to stop people getting shot? How is it going to end illegal crimes like drugs being sold, drug dealers and addiction through that means? If I want to hear that argument. I invite you, please call in. If not today, leave it in the comments. Because I don't think it makes sense. I don't know. I look at all the information and it makes no sense. There it is. Just want to make sure that people get to see this. Because I know sometimes people say, well, Mike, are you sure? Is this true? Is it real? You're saying this, but where is the evidence? This is why I include political commentary when it is done right and it is done best, is based off, here is the information, firsthand, credible information, and this is how we determine it. That's why I do long form political commentary, so that you can see the evidence, understand what's going on, and make your own decision. It's also why I include the links for all of the data that I go over, so that you can make your own mind up. Because I think you are smart enough to make your own decisions. Apparently, most of the major media does not. I know for a fact, as I listen to the Democrats speak, they don't think you're smart enough, but I certainly do. And this is the New York Post, which reported on July 27th. Representative Jerry Nadler calls violence from Antifa in Portland a myth. By the way, as has been reported repeatedly by multiple sources of the news, there have been nonstop riots in Portland for over 2 months. It has been over 60 days of nonstop rioting in Portland. But according to Jerry Nadler, that's a myth. And, you know, Minneapolis apparently has never burned down, or the Chaz, the takeover of Seattle never happened. We never saw Atlanta, the attempted autonomous zone there by Black Lives Matters. That 8-year-old child that was murdered didn't happen. The mother, Jessica Dottie Whitaker, 24 years old, was not killed by a Black Lives Matter supporter for allegedly saying that all lives matters. Yeah, none of that's happening. It's just a myth of the right wing. I don't understand how people vote. You know, this is why I think people aren't going to vote in 2020. They're fed up with these politicians. And I'm fed up with these politicians. You know, this is the reason. Jerry Nadler is a reason. This kind of thing where he's like, Antifa, violence in Portland, it never happened. Even though we've got the mayor of Portland having spoken about it, even though we've had news media recovering this for years, and in particular over the last 60 days plus over and over again, this is the reason why we need people to have term limits, because they don't care. Jerry Nadler is explaining to us very clearly here, and most of the Democratic Party, and saying that these things aren't real, that there's no real problem. When CNBC and MSNBC and ABC and CNN, when they decline to show the public the consequences of the rioting and looting of Black Lives Matter, of Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, of the far left, when they refuse to show people the consequences of these horrible laws that are being promoted by these individuals, when they decline to show people the problems that are coming from defunding the police, it's because Jerry Nadler doesn't care. The Democratic Party doesn't care. They don't care about black people. They don't care about Hispanics. And let me be very clear. I didn't say Democrats. I'm not saying that. An individual Democrat absolutely cares. I'm sure there are progressives and libertarians. They all care. I'm saying the leadership, the political organizers, that organization's structure could care less, because that's not what they're working on. They want power. Jerry Nadler doesn't care about the violence by Antifa in Portland because it's not going to get him elected. So he doesn't care about it. That's my belief. I could be wrong. He obviously doesn't know about it. It's in the news. It's easily reported. He doesn't know about it because he doesn't care to know about it. He never spoke to the representative from that covers Portland He doesn't speak to them. He doesn't care. Or if he did, he doesn't care to ask about it. Because what's important to him is getting reelected, to remain in power. Nancy Pelosi hasn't spoken about it. You know what? Let me go from top down real quick. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Kirsten Gillibrand, Anthony Brindisi, Bob Wessler, legislator, Bob Wessler. These are some of the individuals that come straight off the top of my head. They don't care about the violence. Councilwoman Angela Riley, Councilwoman Aviva Friedman. To my understanding, in listening to their comments, in looking at their responses, these are individuals that don't care what happens to individuals as long as they get the political advantage that they are looking for, that they get the political gain that they are seeking. That is my understanding. Now, I could be wrong, but I look at this. Bob Wessler, as an example, doesn't even speak about it. Rather than talk to people, he literally shut down his Facebook page. He was promoting and advocating for defunding the police. He hid that because we revealed that he actually promotes that. Angela Riley refuses to respond to why she didn't care. An elderly man was attacked, came to her for help, and she denied it. And it was on video, and she won't speak about it. Aviva Friedman actively wants to defund the police, even though she's never been on a ride-along with police and has no intention to be on a ride-along with police to understand what they do for their job. She rather will accept only the political rhetoric that's given to her. Nancy Pelosi has never spoken about the violence in Atlanta, in Indianapolis, in, to my knowledge, Portland or Seattle. She won't speak about it. It doesn't exist to her. She doesn't even want to speak about the fact that her district, Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, her district has more feces per square foot than most farms in America. And she doesn't care. And Jerry Nadler doesn't care about the violence of Antifa in Portland because it's about political power. You want to talk about why we need to have term limits? I think that explained it right there. I don't know. And by the way, there are Republicans that fall under that same guideline I just mentioned. I believe it strongly. Anyone who's been in Congress for more than 10 years needs to be removed. I think we need to have term limits, and no one should be in Congress more than 10 years, period. I don't think anyone in any elected office should be there more than 6 years, ever. That's a personal opinion. It's something that I stand by. If I were to get elected in November, I'm not going to be there 6 years later. I'm going back to the private sector. That is not a job that you have for life. It is not meant to be. We should never have someone who is in politics, who is in elected office, that has been there for their life or that is their career, like Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden. Joe Biden's been in elected office for 40 years. If he was going to help black people, he would have done it before now. And if you think having a black woman as his vice president is helping black people, that ain't going to change your paycheck. You are sadly mistaken. That is not going to do it. If you think that any of the people I mentioned, and you can go through the Republicans as well, Mitch McConnell as an example, many others, if you think they've been in any of them, you know, I love the Republican Party. I'm a staunch Republican. Nobody should be in office for more than 10 years. I just, and in the Senate, in the case of the Senate, which is 6-year terms, 2 terms, which would be 12. There's the only exception I would be willing to give, because no one deserves to be in that long. And the longer they're in, the more corrupt they become, and the more they become like Jerry Nadler. The more they become someone who's so desensitized and someone who is apparently, I don't know the man, so I can't speak about him personally, but from what I can see and making this kind of comment, someone who is saying a proven fact doesn't exist because it doesn't match their political preference, that's someone who is so desensitized to the human condition that they don't deserve to be in elected office. They are actually a problem in being in elected office. I think it's truly a problem that Jerry Nadler is in office when he doesn't care about the violence that is happening to Americans in America by terroristic groups like Antifa. And he is so desensitized and so his political agenda is so much more important than the people that he can't see the facts for what they are, as they are reported by the news media, credible news media, repeatedly for 60 days in a row. I can't make it more direct than that. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. And if you think I'm wrong, if you think that that's not a correct understanding of the situation, if you think that the response from Jerry Nadler is saying something else, if you think that being in elected office for 40 years, 50 years, like Nancy Pelosi and Nadler himself, I believe he's been in 25 years, individuals like Senator Schumer, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who've been in all of them decades. If you think that's not a problem, please explain to me how. Tell me what's the benefit to the public when they become so desensitized that they don't care about the violence happening to other Americans across this country. And to bring that back to the theme of the episode today, I can understand why, and I believe, Democrats are completely demoralized. I think they're disinterested in the 2020 election. And I think that they are willing to see anything happen, to let anything happen. And I think the party is so terrified of losing their power that they bought hook, line, and sinker what Donald Trump said. When he said, let's delay the election, they jumped on that and said, oh, no. No. People have to be able to vote. But I just don't think a lot of people want to vote. And it's not because I think people aren't talking or afraid to talk. I think it's because they don't see that there's anything to vote for, especially for anyone who's a non-progressive at this moment. But I don't know. That's my thoughts. And you've been with me today. We got 3 more minutes, 2.5 more minutes before the end of the show. And I thank you, each and every one of you. I want to thank also Jason from Binghamton for calling in. Something that everyone is able to do. And don't feel like it's ever too late to send a text or to make a comment, whether it's on Facebook or YouTube, or to call in. We look at comments after the show. We always respond. We try to respond to everything as soon as we possibly can to let you know what's going on. As a side note, I do want to mention, there may be, and it's trying to be worked out right now, there may be an event which I will be speaking at on August 11th. If that is the case, if the event does go forward, and I will be speaking there as one of the featured speakers, it will come out. We will cover that live, and we will provide that to you unedited so that you can see everything. So that is our goal. And so again, if you are in the Southern Tier region, there may be an event that's coming up. It's quasi-political, where we will be speaking at, and I will be speaking at on August 11th. I expect it'll probably be towards the evening. More details will be coming up on that as it is confirmed. And I hope people will find that interesting. Hope so. And we've got another, wow. It's one of the few times where I'm stuck for time. That almost never happens. By the way, you should never feel like you can't speak. It is terrifying and it is insulting, and I think it's a sad statement on America today that 62% of Americans are afraid to express their political views. That's not what America is supposed to be about. And this was done by the Cato Institute and YouGov. did a national survey. 62% of Americans say the political climate prevents them from saying what they believe. That should never happen in America. You're an American citizen. You should always be able to speak out. That is one of the rights that we have that the rest of the world is jealous of. And there's a reason why they're jealous. It is a wonderful and powerful tool we have. Always speak out. Whether that means you're going to say that, Mike, I just didn't like your show today, or I didn't like you. Or whether it's to say, hey, I just subscribed. Or you think that something that I went over was misstated or misunderstood, misrepresented. Please, it's perfectly fine. No one learns if no one speaks. You can't learn we learn to get to the moon because we asked the question, can it be done? And then we asked the question, how do we do it? And then we got to the moon. You can't do that if you don't speak, if you don't ask questions, if you don't learn. And that's true in life as it is in politics. That's just the way I believe it. That's what I think. But people, we've had a great show today. I thank you. Every Sunday, 2:30 p.m., I'm on live with you to hear what you think and to speak with you about the issues that are affecting us all. This is long-form political commentary. Descriptions will be in the YouTube description. And until the next time, I want to thank you folks. Oop, I forgot that was up there. I want to thank each and every one of you. I hope you are all going to be safe, well protected, well loved, and most importantly, let me bring this up again. And if for any reason you do not feel like you are loved, if you do not feel well, please reach out to someone on YouTube, on Facebook, on making the phone call. Even with COVID, they are there to help you. They are there, and there will be someone to help you. Please reach out to them. With that said, I want to thank each and every one of you. I hope you're going to be well. I'll talk to you again soon.